I'm creating this video to be a launch pad, a starting point for further discussion on the topic of atheism and morality. I've been in some discussion online on Facebook about the worldview of atheism or agnosticism and objective morality, and what I believe to be inconsistencies within that epistemology. I'm going to read a post I made on Facebook and then an atheist's response to that, and then my responses to his response. I have not asked him permission to use his name, so I'm just going to call him Atheist in this video. So here's my post on Facebook. Question: why is murder wrong? And I believe the atheist response boils down to, quote, because it is the selfish taking of another person's life. And they may come to this conclusion that that's wrong based on society's views, personal views, but how I've seen it play out is that eventually they come to the argument because it is taking another person's life. And so my response is, murder is wrong because it's murder. It seems to be circular logic. Next question, why is rape wrong? The same answer seems to boil down on the atheist side, because it harms others by using them without consent. So, rape is wrong because it's rape? And I added one last question. Why can human beings reason? And it seems the response usually comes down to, because we have been evolved to reason, which suggests that we reason because we reason. So I closed off. Are those really answers the atheist can rest on? We can see that an atheistic worldview cannot stand on its own. In fact, it must borrow from other worldviews to keep itself from falling into complete moralistic anarchy. The Christian worldview is the only one which provides the preconditions necessary for there to exist any reason, morality, or even truth. So atheist responded, you really have no room in your life to understand consensus? People have been around a long time. Many hands have polished these basic ideas about how to coexist. If a person does not wish to be killed, it stands to reason that the person next to them does not wish to be killed either. If I kill one of yours, you have an instinct to kill one of mine. It breaks the peace, and prohibiting it is an obvious thing any society that is going to last is going to do. So far it seems good reasoning. What else did he say? So drilling deeper, one of the primary characteristics of our kind of primate is that we are social in a special way. People love one another. We can see it again and again. Strangers will sacrifice themselves to save strangers. People will band together to save people in peril. Until recently, it was difficult to get soldiers to not intentionally miss or to fire the guns at all. We have mothers, sisters, and daughters. We know that we should not rape because we are empathetic creatures, and it too breaks the peace. People from cultures where the Bible is unknown are going to have similar prohibitions about rape. We reason because we're lucky and developed a situation that made it possible. We certainly have evidence of a time before we existed in our modern form. We stumbled into farming and walked upright. We cooked food and sped digestion, which provided the fat and time to do something beyond a hard scrabble existence. One person built on another. We created external brains through books. And then we developed ways to make books accessible to more people, and on until we are now at the point where we as strangers can talk in real time. And you as a person can revisit this conversation again and again for the foreseeable future. You and I can both die, and people still living can know our minds and take something away from our words. They will reason for themselves which of our views is more correct. I couldn't agree more. That's what we should be doing. So, my response, I said this just to make people think, not that I was basing my own argument on this, but I quote, "If we base morality on consensus, Nazi Germany did nothing wrong. But even if we argued the principle of not harming others, why do so many atheists support abortion?" And I continued, "What again, I ask, is your objective moral standard, which argues for any of those responses? If a person doesn't wish to be killed, therefore the other doesn't want to be? It breaks the peace of society? Why are any of those things objectively wrong? So we evolved to be loving? My point exactly shown. You do not have transcendency in your worldview, so you cannot provide a consistent moral answer, except for, because it's so. We know we should not rape. How about someone who doesn't know they shouldn't rape? What objective moral standard can you use against them, instead of a personal or societal opinion? We reason because we're lucky. Your whole answer here is, as I said, we reason because we reason. That seems to be the argument. So his response to that, Nazi Germany violated the sensibilities of other nations, and it is mankind, who decided what they did was wrong, and chose to make what was legal there a war crime at Nuremberg. There is no objective standard. Here, there is no objective standard, he quotes, which is why we have aberrations on what is acceptable. There is no absolute baseline for morality. People eat what we consider pets, and some consider that immoral. I'll read that again. People eat what we consider pets, like dogs in China, and some consider that immoral. People murder for reasons that do not seem to merit it from our perspective. We do things without thought that others find obscene, from eating flesh to procuring that flesh is what are considered filthy ways. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but so he responds again to my comment, you do not have transcendency, so you cannot provide a consistent moral answer, except for because it's so. Here's that response. The need for an answer to an unknowable thing is a kind of mania. There is some study that shows some notions of morality are locked in our lizard brains. In a CAT scan, we can see decision-making occurring like a chorus of monkeys arguing in different lobes of the brain. The interesting thing is that the more modern the problem, the less persuasive the monkeys become. They can warn us not to kill, but they can't seem to figure out if it's wrong to download a song off the internet. It could turn out that some of what is considered divine is actually just the same echo of learned behavior that makes people in general suspicious of spiders. So I responded, Nazi Germany violated the sensibility of other nations? Sure. But you admit there is no objective standard. Well, for you. So why does that matter? If then it is truly mankind, Who decides right and wrong? I suppose it be impossible for you to stand in front of the gates of Auschwitz and say, quote, this is evil. The only thing you could say is, quote, I or we think it's bad. So that begs the question, what makes us so certain that we can force our Confederate, or shared, views of morality upon other nations? Is not that an intrusion of the all-powerful autonomy that we so love and what philosophers love? I go on. You argue, based on the atheist view, that there's no absolute baseline for morality. That people who eat okay, let me read that again. You argue, based on the atheist view, that there's no absolute baseline for morality. That people who eat what we consider pets is, to us, immoral. So I ask, why do we not force those countries to bow to Western thought and impose on them international restraint for such immorality? If there's no moral baseline, we cannot consistently decide which immoral behavior is worth fighting against. Otherwise, we find ourselves having inconsistencies in our worldview, or rather borrowing from other worldviews to decide which isn't worth fighting against. It is surely inconsistent that atheists all too frequently complain when Christians try to have their morality legislated. And I said, this issue, I submit to you, is not at all an unknowable thing. God has spoken, and his word is sure. Monkeys and lizard brains are not answers to why you can impose your moral views of rape and murder on the rest of society. My point there was not that we shouldn't impose legislation on society restricting rape and murder. Of course we should. My point there was, why do we do so? What gives us the right of way? What gives us the right to do that? And so my argument is that there is no consistent way to answer that question. If you work on an atheistic, naturalistic worldview. Because if it is true that we should not enforce or impose our Western standards on China for eating dogs, I'm not trying to be like stereotypical or anything, but some of them eat dogs. Does that make us right then to impose our views of rape and murder because there's no objective baseline for morality? Because if it's truly subjective, that is morality, there is no way that anyone could say that murder is more wrong than murdering a dog and eating them. What truly makes us different? And if we go by an atheistic worldview, because in reality we are all animals in that worldview. The only thing that seems to be different is reason. And I asked, what and why? Why do we have reason? Is there an answer to that? And he said right here, it's because we have evolved, just as I said, to have reason. That does not answer the question, where does it come from? It doesn't make consistent sense that it could just come out of nowhere. So that was my argument. So what does the atheist have to say when it comes to law, when it comes to enforcing moral opinion on society, no matter what? And the answer to that opinion, the atheist will usually use another opinion because it keeps peace of society. Because society would not last without these laws. What is society? Why do we need society? In other words, what makes that wrong to harm society? It all really does boil down to, do we have an objective moral standard? If not, I believe it's inconsistent to expect law and society to impose any worldview, any moral sense on anyone else. And in this other group that I've been on Facebook, when I use that argument, the common response is usually emotional. How could you say that? How could you say that? Well, I say it for a reason. Because there seems to be presuppositions within the atheistic worldview. Presuppositions seem to be contrary to atheism. To many atheists, they pride themselves in being free thinkers, rational, reasonable thinkers. And to them, it seems that presuppositions in general are something to be avoided. But I argue that this point of imposing any moral opinion on society shows that there is some presupposition that murder is more wrong than eating a dog. So my question stands, why is that? Well, I'm sure many people will say something along the lines of, just because it is, or how could you ask such a question, or because humans are at a higher standard than a dog. And for those answers, I ask, why?